I used to have this thought, and it was a hope that if churches and institutions, if religious institutions and communities made climate change a centerpiece of their ministry, young people would return to the church. And it was idealistic to say the least, given the trends with younger folks and the distrust that they have, rightful in many ways, of institutions and structures. And so I've given up on that sort of, we have to be relevant to young people by talking about climate change. And I think it's the opposite. I think we need to go out into the communities of young people or make ourselves available to young people and say, how can we support you and sustain you in what you're called to do and what you're interested in your care of the earth? And what are the language that you have that you need to hear us say, my generation? Um, and what does that look like to sustain and support people who are feeling the grief and to journey with these people rather than inviting them into my world, see if I to get an invitation into their world. It's kind of related, but it kind of goes back to the advocacy part. But one day when I was up on Capitol Hill and I had my collar on and I was walking past some government building and some man stops me on the street, a younger person, and says, "Well, what are you doing?" I don't remember how he phrased it, like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Oh, I'm lobbying against coal-powered plants in Connecticut or something." And he's like, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, we're spending the day on Capitol Hill." And he's like, "Are you an Episcopal priest?" And I said, "I am." And he says, "I love that I'm an Episcopal person. I'm Episcopalian too." And I thought, just sort of being out there, marching in the streets with people with our collars on, being an advocacy, meeting young people where they need to be rather than saying, "Come into our church building and hear what we have to say for you to learn." It's not the way, and it's not just, it's not equitable, it's not loving to think of those ways of inviting people or expecting them to show up. Um, but I'm sort of hopeful about this not new vision, but this vision of being there and providing just presence and no wisdom, because the wisdom obviously hasn't brought us to a good place in the earth right now. It's my generation that has brought upon a lot of this tragedy that's happening in our world today. And so um, I think we need, I think the interest for me is the wisdom of the young people. And I've said this to my children who are in their 20s, and they're going to hate that I mentioned it, but I ask for their forgiveness. I mean, I feel like I'm part of the history that's destroying the world for their futures, and that makes me incredibly sad. And in one of my books that I wrote, I dedicate it to my two children with the idea that I can't do that much, but the one thing I could do for them was say that I tried. And I want them, and whatever, if they have children, my grandchildren, know that I tried. And please forgive me for all of the things that I have done. In the Episcopal tradition, we have a confession that says, the sins done on our behalf. Forgive us for those sins. And there's so many sins done on our behalf that we as my generation have created. And I take that to think about climate, that other people have done sinful things on my behalf so I can live the life I live. And so and I think that idea for young people is to ask for their forgiveness and for future generations. Whoever comes after me, I hope they forgive me for my life and for all the destruction that my generation and previous generations have brought. Um, so it's,
Yeah.
there's a lot to think there, right? I mean, it's such deep, painful grief on my part, and so many other people's, and anger, anger for what is going to be inherited. And that's where I think faith communities have the strongest voices to say forgiveness, reconciliation, and